Are you a parent of a child who isn't sleeping? Have you wondered why and what to do? Well, if so, you've come to the right place. My name is Daniel. I'm a pediatrician and sleep doctor turned sleep coach and author. And I'm here to share with you the 3 reasons that your little one isn't sleeping and what to do. Super excited. This is the first ever video on this brand new channel. And at the end, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about like who I am, what the plans for the channel is, etc., etc. But I want to start with something that will bring you value right away. So let's jump into it. The 3 reasons are what I call mismatch, pressure, insomnia. So we'll talk about those 3, and of course, what to do depending on what you recognize may be the case in your home, in your house. So firstly, we're going to talk about what I call the mismatch. A little bit more common if you have a younger child, a child that's maybe like 3 or 4 or 5 something, somewhere in that range. But it can happen at any age really, but this is more typical with younger children. So what is this mismatch? Well, this is when a child is spending significantly more time in bed than they need to sleep. Basically, this is when we as parents, we have an idea of how much we think our little one should sleep, and we put them in bed at that amount, but it actually is more sleep than they need. And so to kind of just illustrate this, imagine that you're on a family vacation, okay? And you happen to have you're in a room where, let's say there's 4 of you, the 4 of you are in the same room, and lights out typically at home is 8 o'clock for the kids. And so what are you going to do? Well, you have to turn off the lights for everyone at 8 p.m. But you actually typically don't fall asleep until more like 10 or maybe even 11. So what do you think will happen to you when lights out happens at 8 p.m.? Well, you might say, like, I'm so sleep deprived, I'm just gonna fall asleep. Well, jokes aside, let's say you're not. Well, we can say this: like, if you actually need 6 hours of sleep, but you spend 9 hours like in bed with your eyes closed, basically waiting for sleep to happen, you will be awake for at least 3 hours. There's just no question about it. Like, this is just basic sleep physiology. We all have a certain sleep need, and we can't sleep more than that. So if an adult needs to sleep around 6 hours, which is what actually that's how much most adults actually sleep, but they're put in bed for 9 hours, they will be awake for 3 hours. There's just no ifs, what's, buts about that. That's just what's going to happen, right? So if we go back to your child here, if you have a child that their sleep need is about 9 hours, typically on average night, their body needs about 9 hours of sleep, but you put them in bed 11 hours, then they will be awake for at least 2 hours. Like, there's no question about that. That will happen. There will be a mismatch, and that can that can be frustrating, of course, because you're like kind of waiting for them to fall asleep and they're not falling asleep. And now the hint, like one hint to like, okay, is this a mismatch situation I have going on in my house? The hint will be this: your little one is actually full of energy, wants to play. This is the parent who says, like, at 8 or something, they're super happy. They just want to play up. They don't want to sleep at all. They're doing they want to do anything but sleep. But clearly this child is not particularly tired or sleepy, and they're also not particularly worried or anxious. They just want to play. They're awake. They're clearly not sleepy. So this is a hint that there might be a mismatch situation. So what to do? Well, this is quite straightforward. When there's a mismatch situation, what we want to do is like align sleep needs and time in bed. So there are 3 ways to do that. One is to have to delay bedtime, to have our little one go to bed a bit later. And the other one is if there are naps. Now this is something to consider too. If there are naps happening, we can consider reducing those naps, because then there will be more sleep need at night. So reducing naps is another possibility here, or an earlier rise time, and that's really it. And when the sleep needs are more aligned with how much your child needs to sleep, they will fall asleep sooner and sleep through, and there will be no more mismatch. So that's the first situation. Now let's move on to the second one: pressure, which can happen really at any age. But is a little bit like the mismatch is typically like little young kids, And the pressure and insomnia, this happens towards like school age and above more typically. So what is this pressure situation? Well, this is basically when a child doesn't sleep because they feel pressured to sleep. And just to kind of illustrate this, imagine that someone told you that you must fall asleep within 5 minutes to get a new car. There's a World War II. Like, so what would happen here? Well, there's in this example, there's both like pressure. Somebody says that you must sleep, but there's also kind of a reward. So there's a lot of emotions tied into how fast you can fall asleep. You're really motivated and pressured to fall asleep real quickly. And what happens? Of course, you're going to have trouble sleeping because sleep is a passive process. Sleep happens when we're not feeling threatened or pressured. We're not feeling like we have to do anything in particular, right? So the source of the pressure when it comes to your child is most likely, if we're being completely honest, it's probably us. It's probably us parents, or you yourself in this situation, right? And what we need to remember is that if we want peaceful sleep to happen, whether it is our own peaceful sleep or the peaceful sleep of our child, our means must be peaceful. We truly cannot force someone to sleep. We cannot bribe someone to sleep either. We cannot control sleep, not our own or not of that the sleep of somebody else. So if you think about it, you might recognize things that are not entirely obvious, which is like maybe you've tried to reward your child for sleeping with a sticker chart or something like that. Maybe you haven't done something that's quite that obvious. Maybe simply when your child is still awake, you've been sighing and being like, "Can't you just go to sleep? Or please sleep? Like, can't we?" Like things of that nature, which a lot of us do. A lot of us do that. But if we think about it, that signals that we're not happy with our child not sleeping, which makes them feel pressured to sleep, which keeps them awake. This is a common scenario. And the hint that this may be happening in your home is that your child's sleep is sort of reflected in your state of mind. If, for example, let's say it's a vacation time and it's okay if they're up late and you're not really pressuring them to sleep, then they sleep easier. But when you think it's important that they sleep, like they have to get to sleep, then they have more trouble sleeping. If you can see that your child's sleep sort of is reflected, or your sleep is a reflection of your partner's or somebody else's, some other adults like state of mind, that's a hint that this is this pressure situation that's keeping some struggle with sleep going. And what to do here is really quite obvious too. Deploy less pressure. It's not necessarily easy when we do want our child to sleep, but we can't force them. So we have no option but to sort of do this like inner work and be like, it's okay if they're still awake. It's okay if they're not sleeping right now. It's all right. I'm not going to pressure them or try to influence them or anything like that. If for anyone who has followed the content that we produce for adults in the Sleep Coach School's YouTube channel, we talk a lot there about what we call befriending wakefulness. And when it comes to having a child that has that often isn't sleeping and has felt pressure and things of that nature, then what we can do is befriending wakefulness by proxy, which means that we as adults, we take this path of becoming more okay with our child being awake, not seeing that as a threat or a danger or something we have to fix or a problem like that. And then when we sort of befriend wakefulness by proxy, there's less pressure. Things happen easier. Sleep happens easier. So finally, then we have what I've simply called insomnia here. And also common, but this is really mostly in a child that's maybe 8, 9, 10 or more, because insomnia, it requires a certain level of maturity. It's actually, in a way, there's some complexity there. It sort of requires us to have the maturity, if you will, to be able to become afraid of something abstract. So insomnia is when a child doesn't sleep because they have become afraid of being awake or afraid of not sleeping. And we can see that this wouldn't happen in a 3 or 4-year-old. They cannot really, they're not at a level of maturity where they can become afraid of something abstract like that. But a 8, 9-year-old or teenagers or somebody in that age range can actually become afraid of something abstract like being awake. And so insomnia is really when it's an ongoing and self-perpetuating struggle where fear of not sleeping keeps us awake, thereby creating what we're afraid of, which makes us more scared. And then we don't sleep because we're scared of not sleeping, etc., etc. So this is what we call insomnia. And the hint here is that your child is anxious and thinks a lot about sleep and worries about sleep, regardless of your state of mind. You may think, you may not be pressuring them, or you may be feeling quite at ease, but your child is still worried about their sleep. This is a hint that they have insomnia. And what to do here? Now, this is not something you can sum up, in one sentence, although I've tried to do exactly that. My point here is that there will be much more content for anyone, regardless of which circumstance your child is in. When it comes to this struggle of sleep, there will be more content, but particularly when it comes to insomnia, it often requires quite a lot of understanding and inner work and education to leave this struggle. But anyway, to share something that can be practical, that I think can be practical right away. What we want to do here is teach our child that being awake is not a real threat. It's not a danger. It's nothing that can harm us. Being awake is just a state of mind. It's completely harmless. But it can become a perceived threat. Our brain, the safety detector in our brain, can start to think that being awake is a real threat. And then we have this struggle we call insomnia. And something that can help a little bit here is that imagine that your child was scared of something else that is not a real threat, like scared of the dark, scared of the monster in the closet or under a bed or something like that. How do we approach that? We wouldn't be like, "What's wrong with you?" That's ridiculous. We'd be kind of like, give them a hug and be like, "There's really nothing there. Don't worry. It's gonna be okay. It's all fine." That overall, that approach is really the same. That we show, like, empathy, kindness, warmth, but still educate our child that there's really, like, being awake is harmless. It's okay if you don't sleep. It's okay to be awake. It's nothing dangerous, and that leads to the fear fading and sleep happen easier. So yes, that was that in summary. Or what I want to say here is that we have hopefully shared a little summary of pediatric insomnia or sleep struggles in children that I think that I hope will be really helpful for you. And finally, here I want to share a little bit more about, like, what's next for Waby Saby and what's going on here. So Waby Saby is a project that myself and my wife are working on, and my wife, her name is Jamie Robot. She is a pediatrician, and she's becoming a pediatric developmental specialist. And she's also a sleep coach and has a lot of sleep knowledge. So really perfect person to be doing this work. And she found this philosophy, Japanese philosophy, called Waby Saby, spelled with an I, Waby Saby. And the essence of this philosophy is in fact, I think it started off as maybe a design, it's kind of a school of thought when it comes to design. And the thought there is that instead of looking at a crack or some wear or tear or some sign that something is that time is passing as something unwanted, within the school of thought, it's actually emphasized as something beautiful, something nice. And so we really liked that. So we decided to call this project here Waby Saby. And the idea is that, yes, there are things that we can do to help our children and educate them and educate ourselves. But sometimes, also our kids are just who they are. Maybe they are a little bit nervous. Maybe they are a little bit scared. Maybe they are a little bit like that. Maybe that's their temperament, their personality. And instead of looking at that as something we don't want to see, we can, have a Waby Saby moment and see that that's who makes them who they are. And that's a beautiful thing. So that's a little bit about Waby Saby. I talked about myself already. I've written a couple of books. I have another YouTube channel for adults with insomnia, and this one is going to be for children. But other than that, I've learned a lot that I think can be meaningful here, which is how to produce YouTube videos, and my idea is very similar. That here we're going to like really learn and grow together. So we're gonna have videos like this one that are educational. We're gonna have videos where we ask questions from people like yourself. We're gonna have interviews, and I hope we can produce a lot of content here that will be super helpful for any parent who's had this struggle with their kids' sleep, where you not looked forward to bedtime, you've dreaded bedtime, you tried everything and nothing has helped, etc., etc. So yep, thanks for being here, thanks for tuning in, and look forward to having you back here real soon. And yeah, that will conclude the first ever Waby Saby video. And yeah, hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and hope to see you back real soon. Bye for now.